And now, with these new reports claiming that Kris was allegedly the Ghislaine Maxwell of the entertainment industry, it's all starting to click now.
Bruh, I wasn't even looking for this today. I'm scrolling, I see people screaming Kardashians in the Epstein files. And I'm thinking, all right, here we go again. But then I realized the real problem isn't even the Kardashians. The real problem is how this game works every single time. A name pops up in some official paperwork, everybody starts celebrating like handcuffs are coming, and then nothing happens. And it's not because the public is stupid. It's because the system is built to flood you with paper, confuse you with files, and keep you emotionally busy while the powerful keep moving. So yeah, the Kardashians got exposed. But what it really means is way darker. And it explains why people keep saying everybody connected, nobody arrested. All right, let's talk about what's actually being claimed, what's real, and what's noise. I wake up and the whole timeline is screaming the same sentence like it's a courtroom verdict. The Kardashians got exposed in the Epstein files. And you already know how the internet works. Once a sentence like that catches fire, people don't ask questions. They grab pitchforks and start writing the ending in their head. And I get it, because the Kardashians are one of those families where folks already feel like something is off. Too much money, too much access, too many powerful friends, too many perfectly timed wins. So when any official sounding document gets tied to that name, the public is like, finally the universe caught up. But let's be real. This didn't go viral because people carefully read a PDF. It went viral because it hits all the emotional buttons at once. Epstein, Maxwell, trafficking, billionaires, famous sisters, secrets, cover-ups. That's like a cheat code for outrage. And the other reason it spread? Because people are tired. People been watching powerful folks skate for years. So the second they see anything that looks like receipts, it feels like hope. It feels like justice pulling up. It feels like handcuffs around the corner. But here's the trick. The phrase "in the files" doesn't mean what people think it means, because "in the files" can mean a lot of things. It can mean a proven fact. It can mean somebody said your name. It can mean you're connected. It can mean you're mentioned. It can mean someone submitted a complaint. It can mean somebody is accusing you of something that hasn't been verified yet. So before we even get emotional, we got to slow down just enough to separate paper from proof. Not because I'm trying to protect anybody, nah.
Actually, I don't care.
Because this is exactly how the system survives, by letting you think a document is a conviction. This is the part nobody likes to admit. A PDF is not justice. An official looking filing is not an arrest. And a name appearing in paperwork is not the same thing as a judge saying guilty. But the internet treats it like it is. The moment somebody says it's on the DOJ site, everybody turns into a prosecutor. Everybody starts talking like they were in the courtroom. Oh yeah, it's over. Cooked. RICO. Lock her up. Like the police are literally outside Kris Jenner's house warming the car up. And I'm not here to play defense for the Kardashians. I'm here to expose the mechanism. Because this is the oldest trick in the book. Flood the public with files, starve them of consequences. You ever notice how the public always ends up doing the work? Screenshotting, archiving, making threads, connecting dots, breaking down pages, creating timelines. Meanwhile, the actual accountability system just sits there. And then when nothing happens, the public gets tired and cynical. See, told you, everybody connected, nobody arrested. And that cynicism becomes the shield. Because once you believe nothing matters, you stop pushing, you stop demanding, you just watch. That's what it really means. Not that one PDF ended the Kardashians. It means the machine knows how to keep you emotionally busy without changing anything. So now let's talk about what's actually being claimed in this thing, because even if some of it sounds crazy, the way it's packaged is exactly how these moments go viral. All right. According to the complaint that's being circulated and discussed, the person submitting it is claiming Maxwell had some kind of close relationship with the Kardashian sisters. And then it goes into a bunch of accusations that hit hard, but also feel all over the place. They're claiming identity fraud, like their identity was used. They're bringing up rumors about eggs being used for pregnancy, fertility, surrogacy exploitation, and even saying DNA testing would be needed. They're talking about the Kardashians using their name and funds to promote business ventures. Then you hear this 600 million cosmetic money floating around in the same breath, with Kylie's business mentioned. And when you hear it like that, your brain does two things at once. One side says, that's so extreme. That sounds unbelievable. The other side says, wait, that's exactly the kind of evil I always assumed these elites were on. That's why it spreads. Because it's written like a greatest hits playlist of modern paranoia. Trafficking, identity theft, fertility stuff, missing money, billion-dollar brands, powerful friends. It's a stack of accusations designed to trigger disgust and disbelief at the same time. Now, I'm going to say this clean. A complaint is a claim. It's not a verdict. It's not proof, but it's still a cultural event because of what it reveals about the ecosystem. And the next part is important, the way this thing reads. Because the sloppiness might be the biggest clue in the entire story. All right, let's talk about the part nobody wants to talk about because it messes up the adrenaline. The complaint, at least the way it's being read and passed around, looks sloppy. The grammar looks wild. The structure feels scattered. It reads like somebody dumped a lifetime of trauma, suspicion, and half-connected dots onto one page. And you know what that does? That creates a perfect two-way trap. Trap number one. The public sees the sloppiness and goes, this is fake. This is crazy. Ignore it. And boom, conversation over. Billionaire safe. Everybody goes back to scrolling. Trap number two. The public sees the sloppiness and goes, this is so messy, it must be real. A lawyer didn't sanitize it. And boom, now it spreads even faster, but in the messiest way possible. People start adding details that aren't even in the doc. People start making edits. People start turning rumors into facts by repeating them. Either way, the mess becomes the shield. Because if you're a powerful person and a chaotic document hits the timeline, you don't even have to fight it. You just let it sit there. You let people argue about the punctuation. You let the internet discredit itself. You let the story collapse under its own weight. And that's why I don't get hypnotized by this is in a PDF. I get hypnotized by the playbook. The sloppiness is not just a writing issue. It's an accountability issue. Because in real life, a messy accusation is easier to bury than a clean one. So I'm not here yelling guilty. I'm here asking the smarter question. Why does the public keep getting handed messy chaos instead of clean accountability?
Why?
And that brings us to the only part that doesn't even require the wildest claims to be true. This is the part that makes people uncomfortable. Even if you throw out the most extreme details, the eggs, the identity stuff, the money claims, the piece that still lands is the idea of Maxwell being adjacent to rich and powerful circles. Because let's be honest, Maxwell wasn't just around Epstein. She was a networker, a gatekeeper, a social climber with access, the type of person who shows up wherever there's money, status, and influence. So when people hear Maxwell and Kardashians in the same sentence, they act shocked like it's impossible. Bruh, this is celebrity culture. Everybody is 2 handshakes away from everybody. It's a small room. The public thinks it's a big world because they see a million faces. But the top of the pyramid is a tiny circle. And here's the thing. Even if somebody never took a picture together, that don't mean they never cross paths. Rich people don't move like regular people. They don't always do public hangouts. They do private dinners, introductions, events you never see. Places where the cameras don't get invited. So when you see a name overlap, it's not automatically a conviction, but it is a red flag that the same social pipeline keeps showing up in every scandal. And that's why this whole moment feels like zero surprise to people, because it's not about one document. It's about a repeating pattern of proximity. And once you see the proximity pattern, you start seeing the bigger one.
Bruh, this is where the audience is at emotionally. People aren't shocked. They're tired because it feels like every month there's a new exposure, a new set of names, a new files drop, a new documentary, a new whistleblower.
Oh, Lord. Again. Again. Nothing new, nothing changed, same old shit.
And the result is always the same. Everybody allegedly connected, but nobody getting arrested. And before somebody tries to twist that into, so you're saying they're all guilty, nah. I'm saying the accountability system is selective. I'm saying the public keeps getting connection stories instead of consequence stories. That's why you see people online basically begging for the whole thing to burn down. Take down Hollywood, take down the government, cancel sports, start society over. Because when people lose faith in justice, they don't become calm and rational. They become apocalyptic. They want a reset button. And I can't even blame them. We really are living in a time where it feels like only poor people get held accountable. Regular people miss one payment, they're cooked. Regular people make one mistake, their life is over. But if you have money and power, you get options, you get delays, you get PR, you get internal reviews, you get settlements, you get silence. So when a headline hits like Kardashians exposed, people don't hear maybe, they hear finally. They hear this is the one. They hear the elite are about to pay. And that hope is dangerous because hope without consequences turns into cynicism. And cynicism is exactly what protects the system. Now, the next piece is where it gets even more interesting because it explains why certain people keep popping up in these conversations like they're warning the public. All right, let's talk about the part that makes the timeline go into prophecy mode. The second the Kardashians get mentioned anywhere near Maxwell or Epstein, people immediately go, see, Kanye warned us, Ray J didn't lie, Orlando ain't stupid.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
Like the whole thing is a movie and they were the only ones reading the script early. And I'm not going to lie, I understand why people say that because Kanye has been ranting about that family for years. And Ray J has been implying there's a lot more going on behind the scenes than the public knows. So when anything pops up that even remotely matches their vibe, people feel like it's confirmation. But here's what I think is really happening. A lot of these truth tellers aren't doing it because they're heroes. They're doing it because they're surviving. When you're adjacent to powerful people, you learn something quick. You don't win by being the loudest. You win by being useful. And if you ever stop being useful, you better have leverage or you better have an exit plan. So sometimes telling the truth isn't a noble act. Sometimes it's self-defense. Sometimes it's a warning shot. Sometimes it's a signal like, hey, don't play with me. I know things. That's why I don't look at Kanye and Ray J like they're saints. I look at them like dudes who've been in the room long enough to realize the room is dangerous. And I also think some of them are scared, like genuinely, not internet scared, real scared. The kind of scared where you talk weird, you post at strange hours, you say things in fragments because you're trying to speak without saying too much. So when people say they're telling the truth, what they really mean is they're telling enough truth to protect themselves. And that actually ties directly into the Kardashian brand problem because the moment the public feels like you're hiding, every PR move becomes a clue. This is why this moment hits like gasoline because the Kardashians have been in what I call clean image mode. Kim went from reality star to serious person, law school era, social justice era.
Come on, none of it's true. None of it's true. It's BS. They made it up. They lie.
High profile elite events. The whole vibe is I'm not just famous, I'm legitimate. So when anything Epstein adjacent touches that brand, the public reads it like a contradiction. Oh, so that's why you've been doing all that damage control. And let me tell you something. The internet does not care if that's fair. The internet cares if it feels believable. So now people start looking at everything differently. Who she's seen with, who she's dating, who she's doing business with,
who she's sitting next to at the Super Bowl, and they start narrating it like it's a cover story. This explains why Kim went public with Lewis Hamilton. That's the kind of sentence that spreads because it fits the vibe. It may not even be provable, but it sounds like a play rich people would run. Attach yourself to a respected public figure, change the conversation, create a clean headline. And that's the danger of this era. Once the public believes you're managing perception, even your normal life gets interpreted like strategy. Everything becomes intentional. Everything becomes planned. So now the question becomes, why does the public believe the Kardashians would need that kind of armor in the first place? That's where Chris comes in. Look, I'm not going to sit here and act like I can prove a specific crime off a timeline vibe, but I can talk about something we all recognize: proximity patterns. Because people keep saying the same thing. Of course they're involved. Look who Chris's partner is. They've always been close to Diddy. And whether that's literal, exaggerated, or half true, the point is the public sees Chris as the hub. Chris is the operator, the manager, the person who understands branding, access, and relationships like chess. So when the public sees repeated proximity to powerful men, powerful lawyers, powerful circles, they don't see coincidence. They see infrastructure. And that's where celebrity culture gets real dark, real fast. Because in regular life, you can avoid shady people. In that world, shady people are often the ones opening doors. So the public is looking at it like they didn't rise because of talent. They rose because of connections, leverage, and being protected. Now, is that a legal claim? Nah. That's a cultural claim. And cultural claims are what drive outrage because people don't need a courtroom to decide what they believe is happening. That's why this exposed in the files moment sticks. Not because everyone read the whole document, but because it confirms the feeling people already had. Now we got to address the word everybody keeps throwing around like it's a magic spell: RICO. Bruh. The moment people hear organized and money and power, everybody becomes a legal scholar overnight. RICO this, RICO that. This is a RICO case.
It's the biggest piece of dog shit.
Like the courthouse is about to transform into a Marvel movie. And I get why people reach for it, because RICO is the one word that feels like it can finally match the size of what people think is happening. People don't believe this is just one bad person doing one bad thing. They believe it's a system, a network, a machine. So the brain goes, what's the biggest label we got for a machine? And they land on RICO. But here's the issue. The public is using RICO like a vibe, like a synonym for they all in on it. Meanwhile, real accountability requires boring stuff: evidence, timelines, witnesses, documentation, corroboration, the kind of stuff that doesn't trend. So what happens is people scream RICO, and then when nothing happens, they blame the public for being crazy. They don't blame the system for being selective. They don't blame the media for farming outrage. They don't blame the powerful for hiding behind complexity. And that's why I keep saying this is bigger than the Kardashians. This is about how the public is trained to confuse narrative satisfaction with legal accountability. The internet gets the satisfaction of saying, I told you. The powerful get the satisfaction of no consequences. Everybody wins except truth. Now let's talk about the next part, the sacrificial lamb principle. Because once a scandal gets too hot, somebody always becomes the story so the real story can disappear. You ever notice how these big scandals always end the same way? The public starts aiming at the whole machine, and then the machine hands the public one person to focus on, one face, one headline, one monster, one fall guy. And I'm not saying nobody should ever get punished. I'm saying the punishment is often strategically distributed. It's like, here, take this, chew on this, argue about this, while the rest of the pipeline keeps operating. That's why people say stuff like show trial. Like the whole point was to create the appearance of justice without the actual disruption of power. And even when the public is right to be furious, the fury gets redirected. Instead of focusing on structures, money networks, gatekeepers, institutional cover, people get funneled into celebrity obsession. Who's dating who? Who was pictured with who? Who unfollowed who? That's not an accident. That's a pressure release valve. So when the public sees Kardashians named in the files, the emotional storyline becomes, finally, the biggest celebrity family is going down. That's exciting. That's digestible, a movie ending. But the machine doesn't do movie endings. It does controlled burns. If you really want to understand what this means, you don't ask, are they cooked? You ask, who benefits from the public getting loud and then getting tired? And that brings us to the real verdict. All right, here's my conclusion, and I'm not going to whisper it. The Kardashians being exposed in the Epstein files doesn't automatically mean a courtroom is about to light up. It means the public is watching the same pattern repeat in real time. It means we live in an era where names can be infinite and consequences can be rare, where documents exist but accountability is selective, where the public has more access to files than the public has access to justice. And it means the system survives off confusion, because when you flood people with paperwork, half the public turns into detectives and half turns into cynics. One side is screaming, this is it. The other side is screaming, nothing ever happens. And while both sides are arguing, the powerful keep moving. So yeah, zero surprise. Now the smart question isn't, do you believe every line in that complaint? The smart question is, why does the world keep producing the same headline outcome? Connections everywhere, accountability nowhere. And if that question makes you uncomfortable, good, because discomfort is what happens when you start seeing the game instead of just watching the show. Bruh, this is the part that always messes with people. Not the headline, not the names, the pattern. Because if the world keeps giving you connections but never gives you consequences, that's not an accident. That's a design. And once you see that, you stop asking for gossip. You start asking who's protected, who's expendable, and why the same kind of people always walk away clean. And that's why I'm not even here to convince you every claim in that complaint is true. I'm here to tell you what it does. It keeps the public chasing paper while power keeps moving. It keeps you emotionally invested in celebrity villains while the real infrastructure stays invisible. And it keeps regular people feeling crazy for noticing the obvious, that accountability seems to have a price tag. So here's my question for you. When a famous name gets dropped into official files, do you treat it like justice finally showed up? Or do you assume it's the same machine feeding you another distraction? If you want the next video to go even deeper, I'm going to link the one where we break down how these elite networks protect themselves. The lawyers, the PR, the fall guys, all of it, because that's what a real story is. Click now, and I'll see you on the next one.
Panda, 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 panda.
Panda out.